Thank you. I've been here at the university 27 years, and I've really never talked to an audience like this. And I've kind of looked forward to that for a long time. And I created some of the first websites and email discussion groups in kidney medicine and kidney pathology when the web was very young in '94. And at that time and since then, I've encountered all across the world a lot of people complaining about, information technology professionals. And what I have to tell you, which is really what I've always said during this 20-year period, I've never had a technical problem here that you guys weren't able to fix. Maybe I've just led a rather easy life, but that really is the truth. And so I'm very grateful to all of you and to the IT community kind of for keeping me in business all this time. You would recognize there's something technological about something called cyber nephrology. So that's what we became in '97. And this is the most unfair thing you've ever heard of in your life. The creation of NKF cyber nephrology. There were no competing bids. There was only me. They reached out and chose me to do this without considering anyone else. And it was very well funded for 10 years. So yeah, I mean, if I were you, I'd write a major scandal piece about that, but it served me very well. So who am I really? Most of the world knows me as the father of the Banff classification, and that began in 1991. You might recognize this. This is the Trans-Canada Pipeline Pavilion at the Banff Centre. And it can accommodate groups up to about 50, and we had about 21 at that first meeting. And I was doing this with Dr. Lorraine Racusen, and together the two of us created something called the Banff classification. And one other scandal that I'll make you aware of is word abuse, that now in the medical field, a lot of people think Banff is not a town, it's a medical acronym. They spell it in all caps, like they believe every letter must stand for a word and it's all medical. So we have created a thing that is the only game in town. It's the worldwide standard for how solid organ transplant biopsies are read. So when you put a transplanted organ into somebody and something goes wrong with it, you perform a biopsy, and there needs to be standardization of how those biopsies are read, and that's what these meetings that we began in '91 do. And it's all solid organs. So it's kidney, heart, lung, liver, pancreas, small bowel, composite tissue graft, which is things like hands and faces, so all those things. We lead this medical standardization. What about color? I don't know whether you have a favorite color, each of you, but I'm very partial towards purple in my professional life. These are pictures of something called the periodic acid shift stain, PAS. And the classification that I created doesn't work if you don't do a proper PAS stain. So from the beginning, in addition to other high science things in my papers, I've been giving the recipe for properly performed PAS stain and showing lots of pictures of the PAS stain. And there's a movie called The Color Purple, but I'm sort of the other side of the color purple, the medical side of the color purple. And this one slide, I've never done this before, and I appreciate the opportunity speaking to you guys to put all of my life together in this way. Often people see a slide just showing the milestones of the Banff classification. But here I've merged sort of my information technology milestones with the Banff milestones. And the two obviously relate to each other. Because for 23 years now, I've been generating consensus worldwide. Many of you have probably been in situations where you needed to generate consensus, and you've done it the legal way. The legal way is you get a professional facilitator who knows nothing about the subject that you're talking about, but he knows everything about generating consensus. And he comes into the room, teaches all the audience a new way to think, and they put Post-its on the wall and stuff, and you've all done this. Believe me, you've all done this because it's the way human society works now. And at the end of a couple of hours or something, you come up with this new conception of whatever you were working on, having been led by somebody who knows nothing about the subject. And that's the accepted way to do it. And I've done exactly the opposite. And possibly what I have done is criminally wrong, but I have been facilitating consensus as an actual expert who knew something about it. And what that means is, first of all, you have to use cutting edge technology. You want to reach everybody and in a comfortable, efficient way. But secondly, if you come into the room with a strong opinion about something, you have to be willing, if you're going to moderate a consensus discussion, to give up that opinion. If most of the people in the room feel some other way, you have to be willing to shift and to move. So just some of the IT milestones here. We created an email discussion group called NEFROL in 1994. It is the main email discussion group still in kidney medicine and has been very, very successful. Created about 35 other groups, mostly for physicians, with some for patients and so on. A whole spectrum of groups which are not only email groups, but also on the web as forums. And we created the first websites in kidney medicine and kidney pathology. And then you'll see the other milestones of the classification, which went along with the IT milestones in a sense that if we were successful in generating consensus, that meant that the other players, the other people who had competing classifications, would have eventually had to join us. It's kind of like the Borg, no alternative. Anyway, but it was a friendly thing, and so eventually everybody came on board. And then, not to skip ahead too fast, but if you go to the bottom of the slide then, in 2011, I created a course on technology and the future of medicine that talks, I think it's the only university course anywhere in the world that teaches about the fact that machines are going to be smarter than we are someday, will take over the future agenda of the world, and we can only understand and participate in what's going on at that point if we merge or cooperate with them in some way. I said that pretty fast, but a lot of you are probably thinking, oh no, that can't possibly be right. So you might imagine it takes a bit of courage to take this course. We have a student here today who has taken the course, so anyway, you can talk with him, but in the entire university, the thousands of students, I have to promote this course extremely hard in order to end up with sort of the optimal number of students, which is about 14. So we're in a gigantic room in CCIS because that's where the best technology for video is, and we're this little cadre of 14 to 16 people huddled down at the front. And Angus Findlay and others have been supporting us with the video and video editing. But just like I'm doing here, we have amateur video and also professional video. So usually we're shooting from 3 cameras. And what's the use of the amateur video? Well, this is doing something that camera is not. This is taking automatic still pictures using the Sony Smile Shutter software algorithm. So if I'm really boring, if my hand gestures are completely lame, and if I don't smile very much, that camera may not take a single picture. If I'm really animated and smiley and stuff, and if you guys are equally animated, at the end of an hour there may be 200, 300 pictures. So it's another way to judge the success of any speaking engagement. It's not only what the people think, but what the machine thinks. And you end up with pictures, as you might imagine, that no human photographer could have captured. Because as soon as the camera senses that the algorithm is fulfilled, it can take that picture immediately. So if I'm going like this, and if I can only do that for a second, or something else, it will be able to catch those moments that the software thinks is the most interesting visual you could possibly have. Now, lest you think that nothing evolves, those of you who've seen me speak before know there's something different about the way that camera looks, that the Bluetooth connection between the microphone and the camera used to be this huge thing sitting on top of it like a gun. It was like 20 times the size of what it needs to be. And in the last year, that's changed. So you can't even see it now, but previously it was this gigantic thing. That course has been academically productive for me. I've been able to write papers about the course, and it's been very satisfying to be sort of the only person in the academic world doing something exactly like that. There are people teaching about this stuff, but they tend not to be in mainstream academics. Okay, now the Banff classification, which I was talking about before, so this is transplant pathology, the thing that I started in '91. It's had significant impact. It's worldwide. It has resulted not only in a large number of literature citations, but some very high-profile, widely cited articles. And for 23 years, I conducted those meetings with no structure whatsoever. So no society, no company, nothing behind it. Just the benign guiding hand of Dr. Solez and Racusen, and that was it. It was sort of cool that we could do that. Actually, 4 years ago, we considered making a change to a more formal structure. We decided not to. But then, eventually, the way the world is, it didn't make sense to go forward without a formal structure. So in 2013, we created a Swiss nonprofit foundation, the Banff Foundation for Allograft Pathology. And now we've got structure and infrastructure and succession planning and transparency and all those things that I suppose you could have criticized us for not having before. And one thing it tells you is I'm the chair of the foundation now. I can serve for 2 3-year terms, and that's it. So it means that in 5 years there'll be somebody else. And a bunch of other things like that. And I'm sure you're very impressed by these boxes and all these names of people that you've never heard of before. But anyway, you can trust me that this is a very credible structure in a setting where we had no structure at all before. That, for the first 22 years, I just sort of ran the thing by the seat of my pants. And here are some pictures from the meeting. The spirit of the meeting is very important, and you'll actually find many slides talking about this. And you might say, well, spirit, there wouldn't be any science behind spirit, but you'll see there is science behind spirit. And people have told us that this is the best transplantation meeting. Well, how could it possibly be? It doesn't have the resources. So why do they say that? It's a very interesting question. This is the next meeting that we're planning that is in Vancouver. That meeting will have, we think, up to 600 people. And this Banff consensus process, this possibly illegal process where we're not using a professional facilitator, we're using me instead, and sort of how it works in terms of the long-term and short-term outcomes. So what does this mean when people say it's the best meeting? How can this, why would they say that? How can that possibly be so? I think what they mean maybe is that the atmosphere, spirit, and productivity of the meeting is better than what they've encountered before. Now, why would that be? That has to do with Dunbar's number. Now, how many of you have heard of Dunbar's number before today? Okay, cool. Well, most audiences, no one has heard of Dunbar's number. So possibly some of you know more about this than I do. But this is the relationship between the size of your neocortex and your social group. And it also relates to the number of friends you can have that you have a truly empathetic friendship with. You see those people in the hall, you really care about what's going on with them. You can kind of see the world through their eyes and so on. And human beings are limited in the number of people they can do that with. The range is 100 to 200. And if you look at other primates, you can relate the size of the neocortex to the size of their social group. Now, what does that mean? It means that at our meeting, that this idea of empathetic friendships, you see somebody in the hall and you talk to them and you really care, about what's going on with them. That doesn't happen at the larger meetings. If there's 4,000, 5,000 people there, you see lots of people whose face you recognize, but first you're thinking inside, I don't really want to talk to that person, and certainly I don't care what's going on with them. Don't want to hear any stories about their life. I just. So you meet a lot of people that you feel that way about in a small subset, maybe still in a meeting with several thousand where you really do care about them. But I think that's part of the reason that this meeting works so well, that most of the interactions are within this Dunbar's number. And if you think about machine augmentation of the human brain, maybe that's something that will change. But is that what you want? When you think about having your brain augmented, are you looking to have more friends that you can have in, a truly empathetic friendship with? Maybe that wasn't your first goal. You may have had some financial goal or something. But so we don't really know what's going to happen. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the course that we teach. We try to give people all scenarios. It would not be a valid course if I was just a tech advocate telling them that technology is going to save the world and we're headed for a technological utopia. That's possible, but it's just one possible outcome. So from the beginning, we've incorporated tech skeptics as well as tech advocates. And you might say, well, that's very interesting. But when you think about it, do you know any pure tech advocates or tech skeptics? I mean, human beings are complex beings. And what we've found is that nobody is pure. And what's kind of cool is the people we take on thinking they're the best tech skeptics we can find become really enthusiastic about technological subjects. They start sending me technology-related emails all day and stuff. And the people that we think are the real, advocates learn from these skeptics, and they're talking about things that they never knew about before. Navigating by the stars, celestial navigation, the idea of karma, that what you do today may be influenced by things in your family going back 7 generations and forward 7 generations. I mean, these are concepts, a lot of them I've never heard about before the course. So we're sort of mixing things. And I'm sure you're all aware that this idea of navigating by the stars is a really moving way of thinking about technology progress. because people learning to pilot ships, the hardest skill was always navigating by the stars. Everything else was much easier to teach. So sometime, I think in the 90s, they gave up teaching navigating by the stars. You know, it's of historical interest. We have computers now. And then they had huge ships dead in the water because the computer had crashed and they had no way of navigating and nobody knew. So now they've gone back to teaching navigating by the stars. Unless you think this is something totally good and fun to talk about, intercontinental ballistic missiles also use it because they always figure somebody's going to try to jam the system. The one thing you cannot jam is the position of the sun and stars. Nobody has that power, at least not yet. So they also use celestial navigation. So anyway, in the course, we sort of put those two together. And in addition to Moore's law, which I'm sure you all know is this exponential course of upward price performance of computing, we also teach about Eroom's law, and that's the idea that it's becoming enormously expensive to bring new drugs to the market. So it's the exponential decline in the number of new drugs per $1 billion of R&D expenditure. When I talk about the course, you may think this is something peripheral from your life. It has nothing to do with you, but there you would be wrong. Because we decided in the beginning that this course is open to the public completely. So anybody who wants to show up can. You don't have to be a university student. You don't have to sign up for the course. Sometimes the best questions come from the people in that category. This is Moore's law. This is the idea of the technological singularity, predicted to occur around 2045. So I'll be 99 years of age in 2045, but I'm really interested in how this goes, you know. So anyway, Ross Lockwood, some of you may know, he's almost done with his PhD in physics, and he's talked about something called soft transhumanism. So imagine future merger between humans and electronic interface has crept into our lives, social network, all this sort of thing, fully embracing this technological revolution within the university classroom and beyond is beneficial to the learning experience. So that's what we've been trying to do in this course. Here is a more formalized description of what the singularity is. It's the point at which machines are smarter, not just than individual human beings, but the entire aggregate human race. And that is what we predict will happen in 2045. And the machines will also be able to evolve, to self-improve much more rapidly than we can. So after that point, they'll become much, much, much smarter than the human race. You can think of things that would interfere with that, but a lot of those things are actually less desirable. This could turn out well, I'm sure you realize. We honestly don't know. They might make better decisions than we ever would. You might wake up, find the world is totally green, and you know the oxygen content is much higher, and the amount of pollution is much less than you ever imagined, and you won't know how they did that, but it could be kind of a nice thing. So you can be excused for not knowing about the singularity before February of 2011, but at that point it sort of became mainstream in two ways. So on the cover of Time magazine, and the computer Watson beat the top human contenders in the TV game show Jeopardy. So sort of from that moment onward, it's been at least potentially within the human mainstream. So 2045 is only 31 years from now. Many of you will be working then. Many of you who don't think you'll be working then will, because longevity will increase, And you're assuming that you're sort of going to fade out around age 65 and, not be much of a sentient entity after that. And I assure you that that's probably not the case with you. But what could happen and what would medicine be like? So we could eliminate all natural diseases, all the diseases that you know of now, and have a terrible world, absolutely terrible, where the only diseases are man-made, bioterrorism, weapons that there might be no antidote for. And so there are lots of other things. Human enhancement, if you think about that, what's your concept of that, and what are the limits of that, and what would human beings want? If the medical establishment, if doctors are in charge of that, it is something absolutely huge. If in addition to physical enhancement, you include moral, spiritual, and where would you want to stop, right? So it's kind of a big job. So, and then there's a whole social responsibility of medicine, fixing society. One thing you might conclude is maybe doctors are not the best category of person to be in charge of these things. But anyway, someone will have to do that. So I think there will still be medicine, there will still be challenges if we get rid of every single disease that we know of today. A lot of the way that the course runs was determined by the focus group discussions that we had in May of 2011. And one of the things that the students said that has sort of guided me today is I said, do you want mainly good news? Do you want me to hold back telling you about the apocalyptic stuff that could happen? And they said, no, Dr. Solez, the best you can, you should tell us the truth. The whole truth. And so that's what we try to do. And they also liked the idea that this would be the only course in the world that would tell you exactly what the future would be like. Now, how is that possible? It's because we describe so many scenarios that just by accident, one of them will probably be correct. We just don't know which one, right? So we're definitely we're teaching exactly what the future is going to be like. It's just you don't know which exact day. We talked about that. This is Osmer Zayan, and one of those moments captured by that camera, the way that the teaching sessions, the 80-minute teaching sessions have usually run is there's a 10-minute introduction that I give, and then 50 minutes by the lecturer, and then 20-minute discussion. And there's a kind of social life surrounding the course. We decided early on it was really lame to use course time for the student presentations because that takes away from the lectures. So the students allowed me to sort of have parties in the evening with, pizza and soft drinks and entertainment. We even had a clown once, a clown with a bullwhip, and he had me hold out a piece of pizza and he cut anyway, it was scary. This clown with a bullwhip, and the student. Presentations, many of them, are given in that setting. So we intermix this other stuff with the 20-minute student talks. And they have accepted that so that we don't have to take regular class time. Our technology has improved remarkably. If you look at the picture on the left, it's our very first teaching session. You can see how uncomfortable and crowded and inhumane the circumstances look there. And that room, the air handling is louder than any of the speakers we ever had, and everything's bad. And now in CCIS, with your staff's help, we really have outstanding video and audio. And you can go and look at that yourself at youtube.com/user/Kim Solez. We also have hot linked tables of contents. So you might say, 80 minutes, life is short and I'm not going to watch an 80-minute video. So it may be like today, maybe in the 50-some minutes that I speak, there might be only like a minute and a half that would interest you. But with a proper index, we can identify that, and you can tell all your friends to go watch it, and don't watch the rest. It was totally lame, but if you go to minute 48, so that you can do. It's interesting, not everybody approves of that. Some people think people only watch video if they don't know what's there. If you tell them too much about what's there, they'll never watch the video. I think that must be false, but it's an interesting theory. Keep them in the dark or they won't watch. So you might say, okay, so you've talked a lot about this course. Does the course really do anything? So this is, I think, a really spectacular story. So this young woman, Aisha Harian, was one of the students in the course. And you have to admit her presentation title is pretty clever. The Immortal Coil, Existential Risk at the Dawn of the Singularity. Wow. And it was a really good talk. So we put it on YouTube, and within 3 days, she got this awesome job offer from this new startup in New York City. And, the rest is history. It was absolutely the thing that she needed. She had her graduate student plans in place, but there was a bit of a gap between the end of, the undergraduate and the start of the grad, and she'd been to New York City before. She liked the place. It was just perfect. She didn't know about this company, this job. She knew nothing about it. So as a consequence of people watching that video, she became the director of social media at Can Do Inc. And other things like that have happened. Now, every student has a mentor for their presentation. And we honestly don't know whether this awesome title came from Aisha or from Earl Waugh, who was her mentor. But, it doesn't matter. It's still totally cool. And we have faculty teaching there who think that they've ended up there by accident, and we'll probably get rid of them very soon, but that doesn't happen. So one of our most popular lecturers is Heather Graves from the Department of English and Film Studies. And so this is a part of our, diversity approach, and I think it fits well maybe with this lecture series. These are other course specifics. If you want to read more about the course, you can go to singularitycourse.com. The IT staff is an integral part of the course. They are, essential to it. It's very like a human hospital operating room, the changeover, like the 7-minute changeover between patients where they totally clean the room and set stuff up for the new patients. Well, CCIS, there are a lot of other classes in there, so you should see the buzz of activity when we get ready for our lecture and winding things down. So it's sort of cool. From the technology point of view, the videos have the pure white background that many of you have seen in professional videos, which I think we probably won't end up with today because we're lacking the lights and some of the other. It's not only the lights, but the pure white background also helps to make a pure white video. We've had both the Dean of Science and the Dean of Arts speaking. I think eventually we'll probably get the other deans. And the lectures are not very medical. If any of you are thinking, well, this would be cool, but I don't know anything about medicine, I'd probably be totally put to sleep. There's only one lecture that uses significant medical jargon. And it's an interesting lecture too. It's bioterrorism about, anthrax, and it sort of mixes politics and medicine. There are some medical terms in that lecture, but virtually any other lecture you would go to, you'd be able to understand the entire lecture with whatever general background you might have. Why is that? Well, you see, I'm in the Faculty of Medicine. When I create a new course, I figure it has to sound medical somehow. So we could have called this course Technology and the Future, because that's really what it is. But I figure, geez, I don't know if I can do that. So I called it Technology and the Future of Medicine. Now, there's something called medicine writ large, which is what I've talked about before, where medicine includes human enhancement and improvements in society. If you think about it that way, then every lecture we have is about medicine. If you think of medicine as being diseases and therapies, then very few of our lectures are actually specifically about that. Other innovations that will be new this year, we're starting a med student club where the students during the lunch hour with very good food, we're trying to have the best food of any of the med student clubs, and oh, come on. I think it's a telemarketer, 1-888. That's I don't have any friends with a 1-888 number. So yeah, we're starting a med student club where we'll have a combination of live presentations and video to sort of give them the course high points in a pleasant way, during the lunch hour for them with food. We've incorporated peer review, because when you're doing something unique, you can get into a very malignant self-congratulation sort of loop, where you keep telling other people what a great course it is, and they keep telling you, and nothing improves and nothing changes. You just keep talking about how great it is. So we thought that going to outside peers was a really good idea. And they have made some really excellent suggestions. There is only one other course like it in the world. That's a course in disruptive technologies in medicine in Budapest, and we are formally collaborating with that course in many ways. You might wonder about the guy who teaches that course. He is 29, and he doesn't turn 30 until November, which is really cool. I thought, well, he must be like in the late 29th year, but when I started talking about him being 29, he just turned 29. So he's a really young guy doing something very similar to what I'm doing, and it's sort of the two of us in the whole world doing something like this. The other thing that if you think about it, it's all well and good that I'm telling you what great impact the student presentations have had, and what charismatic, outgoing students we have. But what about all the students who are shy and who are don't feel themselves like they're naturally adapted to a course where you have to speak into a microphone and you're on broadcast quality video every moment of the course. So we've decided this term and this year that we need to have formal mechanisms of dealing with a shy student, because that would make this a much more valuable course. It's not a course in public speaking, after all. It's a course in technology in the future, and there are a lot of excellent students who are somewhat shy who probably wouldn't. So how are we doing that? Well, rather than giving a live presentation, they can give a presentation to Angus Findlay only, and he'll do the video and edit the video. Then when it comes time for them to present to the class, they'll show the edited video, and they'll still do the Q&A live. And in terms of asking questions, where we have all these assertive, articulate, outgoing people asking questions. So the shy student can text me a question, and then I will repeat what I've received on text, so they get to be sort of co-equal with the others. That's what we're trying. And the other thing that's new this year is the orientation towards space. Lockwood, as many of you may know, was one of the 6 students selected for this Mars simulation habitat. He is just come back from that. And so a lot of things we teach about in the course, like 3D printing, if you think of a long space voyage, there would be things that you would need that you could never predict that you needed those things. So if you have a printer that can print things that you need at will, that's a very good thing. And what about communication when you're wearing a spacesuit, right? You're all adapted to iPad, iPhone, and so on. Well, it's kind of hard when you got this big, bulky suit to use an iOS device. So these are some of the things that we're talking about also in the course. And you need a visual, like I was talking about purple at the beginning, that probably makes you remember this lecture a bit more. And I think that I'm getting a US space flight suit with my name on it. So I can use that in the course too also. So we'll see if that happens, but I think so. So getting back to the Banff Foundation, this entity that surrounds the transplant pathology consensus meetings that I've been running, we need to confront the future of stem cell generated organs. And most people are remarkably reluctant to do that. There are a number of reasons for that, but one is that the FDA and Health Protection Canada, their biggest challenge now is stem cell tourism. And all of you who are completely rational human beings in most of your decision making, you would have like celebrity or some sports star that you really think about a lot. And if that person goes to Mexico or China and gets some poorly documented injection of stem cells that's never been written up in any medical journal anywhere and comes back claiming this miraculous cure, even you as this completely rational human being that you are, think, well, he did that, and gee, maybe I should get stem cell cure. And so this is an enormous problem right now. So stem cells represent not only this future in terms of a completely better way to make organs that human beings need, it's also a tremendous mess in terms of people taking trips and getting poorly documented therapies that may be dangerous in all sorts of ways. So it's a very complex issue. We need to find a way to get people to really think about this, because if the day will come, and I assure you that the day will come where transplantation is over as we know it today, we won't be transplanting anything into anybody. We'll be making our own organs, and we need to prepare for that. So I encountered a certain reluctance to think and talk about that. I thought, well, I'm the leader. What am I going to do here? And then I just sort of came across something which I think is really, really cool. Think back to 94. You remember I was talking about 94 when I began these email discussion groups and websites. There's another doctor out there, David Crippen, who at the same time I was doing that, he created new email discussion groups and websites in critical care medicine. And the nice thing about that is he is as different from me as you can possibly imagine. And so getting people to confront a future very different from the future that they are thinking about and assuming. One thing that would help with that is to get them to think about, suppose that rather than Kim Solez talking to you now, David Crippen was here. What would that be like? And so this has sort of worked for me as a way of getting people to think about this future with the stem cells. It works better than the idea of turtles all the way down. You may know this, analogy of your field's changing, your field depends upon other fields, so on. The whole universe is changing. People get really bored with that. They start to look away and scratch themselves and so on. It holds their attention for only a short time. David Crippen is a bit different. So in the 60s and 70s, I was the most boring young person you could possibly imagine. I got good grades, but if you met me, it would have totally put you to sleep. And it's just, David Crippen had long hair, he did drugs, he got terrible grades. He had a number of disciplinary expulsions from school, all sorts of things that probably your mother hoped wouldn't happen to you, happen to him. So he was drafted and served in Vietnam before he left. His girlfriend looked him in the eye, told him he was a loser and she never wanted to see him again. Well, in Vietnam, he was extremely brave. He won all sorts of awards for bravery, probably because he figured he had very little to lose, right? And in his email discussion groups, they talk about all sorts of off-topic things. They tell jokes. They talk about politics. We have never done that in the whole 20-some years that I've been. We just talk about kidney medicine. Isn't that boring? And we don't have any characters. We don't have any people you really look forward to their posts. He has lots of characters. He is a karate black belt. But I have lots of civilian awards. He in civilian life has never won a single award. So we're remarkably different. He has his own rock band. It's quite a successful rock band. A lot of physicians have a band, and at various medical meetings, the band plays, and it's really lame, and you think, well, it's kind of nice that they're able to do that, but I wish it was better. His band is good enough that they play for other settings. They don't just play for other physicians. They have played at the House of Blues and stuff. And he has a large cadre of vintage motorcycles, and anyway, very, very colorful life. So his band is called The Codes. You may know this has to do with like a code when you're deciding whether a patient is severely ill, if their heart stops, whether they should be resuscitated. And here is boring me. This is my physician father straightening my tie and my physician grandfather. So I had good genes, but really uninteresting. So has this metaphor worked? So you can test that, I think. And so at this meeting in Brazil, where I first presented this, first of all, that booklet back there, that book that David Crippen wrote about his experiences in the 60s and the 70s, a lot of people have read that. But gradually during the course of this 5-day meeting, people concluded that David Crippen did not exist, that it was a fascinating story and I'd made up this guy, but he did not exist. And I think that when a metaphor becomes a myth, then you really accomplish something. But I'm telling you, David Crippen does exist. He's a full prof at the University of Pittsburgh. And so I think I've kept your attention too, and so you probably now would be willing to to think about stem cell replacement of organs. So in our original, this is the last slide you'll be happy to hear. In our original location at the Banff meetings, we had mule deer poking their head into the meeting rooms. So things are a bit different now. The meetings are bigger. We don't have as much wildlife actually inside with us. And we've come a long way. But during that long journey, I also appreciate very much the help of all of you and your colleagues. Most of what I've done, I could not have done without information technology professionals like yourselves. And so I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to talk with you. Unless you think this is the end and you'll never see me again, there's my email, and you could stay in. I'm probably the most accessible person you've ever met. So, so if you want me to be in your life from now on, I could be. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Sometimes it's a little bit hard after such a general and wide-ranging talk to figure out what question to ask, but certainly there must be. So on that table back there, that book about the 60s and 70s contains a number of shocking statements and photographs, and they have nothing to do with me, I assure you. And we also have some posters there about the course. Some of you may be interested in taking the course or visiting some of the lectures. You would be quite willing to do that, and you may have progeny or other young people who you'd be interested in sending. It is, after all, as the article about me in the Edmonton Journal said, what we're really intending to do is to make the students who take the course street smart for the future. So, everybody else is going to be blindsided by the future. They're assuming it's one way, it's actually going to be some other way. The students who take the course will be uniquely able to cope with whatever it is the future actually brings us. So that's the idea. Any questions? Yes? Am I on the machine side or the human side, you're saying?
The augment side versus the human side.
Yeah. No, I think some people said we'll get what we deserve. That I don't know. That is one way to think about it. I haven't talked about Leonard Cohen today. I think the next time I give a talk like this, I'll probably talk about him more. As many of you know, I run Leonard Cohen events, and I spent a 3-day weekend with him in November 2005. I think that it depends upon how artificial intelligence goes, it is possible that machines will do a much better job of running the world, and so yeah, if that turns out to be the case, I might be on their side. Yeah.
To follow up then, do you see humans ending up being like Amish or in a zoo?
No, I think we'll be a part, but then the question is, so let's say you have an augmented brain, right? So there's you, but then in your head there's this computer, and you come up with an idea, and the computer improves it 1,000-fold. Who really should get the major credit for it? Is it always the human who started it? And so I think that's an interesting question. What will happen to human identity, human names, the ownership of ideas? There's one scenario you can think of where, all this stuff about computer thought really won't happen, and computers won't be able to be creative, and that will remain. And many people wish to believe that, but probably anything you identify that's formulaic, that you could put in words or formulas, computers can get better at that than we can. I don't know. I think that probably we will be in the mix. We'll be cooperating with these machines. They may even be a part of us. So it's not really us against them. I don't see us being in zoos. No. But I don't see them being in zoos either. There'll be an issue when you're a super sentient being, when you obviously know more and can make better judgments. Doesn't that mean that you have some rights? So we shouldn't be in zoos, but probably they shouldn't either. Right? Yeah. And what about pulling the plug? You know that in all the technology that you deal with every day, that related to power has advanced more slowly than everything else. But I think that's changing. Very soon, the idea that you could deal with a machine by pulling the plug won't work, because they'll have all sorts of wireless solutions, and they won't need the plug. So I think a lot of you are feeling, well, I can just pull the plug. He doesn't know I can just pull the plug, but I can just pull the plug. You're probably wrong. So. Other questions? Anyway, thank you for being brave enough to ask a question. Think of how terrible this would have been without any questions at all. Any others? Please, if you're interested in the course, and if you want to take one of the posters away, please do that. I'd be happy to hear from you by email. And if you want to look through David Crippen's book, you can do that too. He and I are writing a paper together with a young person, not this young person, but a person like this person as the second author. So I'm first author, the young person second author, and David as the third author. For the best journal that I know in our field, who has said that they would be willing to at least consider such an unusual paper. So we'll see how it goes with the fate of that paper. Okay, any questions? So those of you who have been involved in solving problems for me over the years, thank you very much. Or if you've trained some of the people or worked with them, I really meant what I said. It gives me a sort of confidence that when other people say that technology's a mess and you can't trust it and everybody's out to get you, and IT professionals are evil and lazy, I don't find that in my own personal experience.
I think we'll wrap up, but I understand that we're not getting kicked out of the room, and I'm not sure if we can trap Dr. Solez, but we might have a bit of a chance of doing that. So if you want to mingle and ask some questions, if you just weren't brave enough to raise your hand.
Yeah, right. So I'm all about empowering the shy student, and if some of you fall in that category, I'd be happy to meet some shy students here. So, yeah, certainly.
Great. Well, thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.